There's a superhero on Amazon Prime who murders people with his laser eyes, drinks human breast milk from a bottle in public, and genuinely believes he is a god. And a 17th century English philosopher described him perfectly 350 years before he existed. I want to put two things side by side and let you decide what to make of it. On one side, a superhero show on Amazon Prime. On the other, a political philosopher who died in 1679. The parallels are kind of uncomfortable in the best possible way. Let's go. The Boys is a superhero show, except the superheroes are the villains. They're called supes, genetically modified humans, with extraordinary powers manufactured by a corporation called Voot. They're worshipped like celebrities. They appear on talk shows. They have endorsement deals. They have action figures. And they are almost universally corrupt, dangerous, and completely unaccountable. Because here's the thing nobody asks in a Marvel movie. What would actually happen if superheroes were real? Would they save us? Or would they, as every single piece of historical evidence suggests, use their power to do exactly what they wanted and dare anyone to stop them? The Boys asks that question, and the answer is deeply, uncomfortably on brand for humanity. Let's talk about Thomas Hobbes. Born 1588, England. He lived through a civil war, watched a king get executed, and spent most of his adult life convinced that human beings, left to their own devices, are an absolute disaster. His conclusion? Without structure, without authority, without something keeping us in check, human life is, in his exact words, solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short, which is both the most depressing sentence in philosophy and also an extremely accurate description of every season of The Boys. Hobbes believed that in a true state of nature, a world without laws or consequences, every person would be at war with every other person, not because humans are evil, but because when there's nothing stopping you from taking what you want, you take what you want, and everyone else does the same. He called this the war of all against all, bellum omnium contra omnes, which sounds like a Harry Potter spell, but is actually the most accurate description of Homelander's Tuesday morning. Here's where it gets genuinely fascinating. Homelander, the most powerful superhero in The Boys, is Thomas Hobbes' thought experiment made flesh. He is a man with no meaningful constraints. He can fly. He has laser eyes. He is effectively invincible. No law applies to him. No consequence reaches him. So what does he do with that? He doesn't save the world. He doesn't become noble. He doesn't evolve into the best version of himself. He becomes increasingly unstable, increasingly paranoid, and increasingly convinced that everyone around him exists to serve his needs, because Hobbes predicted this. When there are no consequences, there is no incentive to be good. Goodness, Hobbes argued, isn't something humans just are. It's something humans perform. When the alternative has costs, remove the costs, and you find out who people actually are. Homelander found out. The answer was not encouraging. But here's what's brilliant about The Boys. It's not just about Homelander, it's about the system that created him. Hobbes didn't just diagnose the problem, he proposed a solution. He called it the social contract. The idea is simple. Human beings give up some of their freedom in exchange for protection and order. We agree not to hurt each other. We agree to follow rules. We agree to submit to authority, not because we want to, but because the alternative is chaos. Vought International in The Boys is a perversion of exactly this contract. They created supes, beings of enormous power, but gave them zero accountability, all the freedom, none of the contract, all the power, none of the constraint. And Hobbes would look at Vout and say, What did you expect? You built Homelander, you removed every consequence, and then you're surprised when he behaves like a man with no consequences. That's not a supervillain problem. That's a systems problem. Here's what makes this even more interesting. Butcher, the man leading the boys, the one trying to stop Homelander, is also Hobbes' thought experiment, just the other direction. Butcher grew up with no protection, no system that worked for him. Every institution failed him, every authority betrayed him, and so he built his own rules, his own justice, his own war of all against all. Except this time, he picked a side. Hobbes would say, Butcher is what happens when the social contract breaks down for a specific person, when the system stops working for you. You stop working for the system, and you become exactly the kind of person the system was supposed to prevent. The Boys isn't a show about good guys and bad guys. It's a show about what happens when no one trusts the contract anymore. And honestly, given the state of 2026, that's not science fiction, that's Tuesday. Here's the uncomfortable part. Homelander isn't a superhero with laser eyes. He's a thought experiment. What would you do if there were no consequences? Most of us like to think we'd be fine. We'd still be kind, still be fair, still do the right thing. But Hobbes wasn't so sure. And honestly, neither am I. The truth is, most of the goodness in the world is not purely virtue. It's virtue plus consequences. We don't steal, partly because stealing is wrong, and partly because of what happens if we get caught. I think about this whenever I see someone cut in line at the grocery store because that person, that very specific, aggressively confident person who walks straight to the front and acts like they simply don't see you. That person has done their own small calculation. They've decided the consequences of cutting are lower than the benefit of not waiting. Now give that person laser eyes. That's Homelander. The math is exactly the same, just the variables are different. The Boys doesn't answer what you would do, but it makes it impossible to look away from the question, and Hobbes hands you the frame, which honestly is what great philosophy does. It doesn't tell you what to think, it just makes certain questions impossible to unask. Leviathan, Hobbes' masterpiece, is in the description. Fair warning, it was written in 1651, so the prose is exactly what you'd expect from a man who lived through the English Civil War and had strong opinions about literally everything. Dense, brilliant, startlingly relevant, also long, very, very long. But chapter 13, the one about the state of nature, is worth every sentence, and maybe after reading it, or after this video, watch The Boys differently, not as a superhero show, as a philosophy class, a very violent, extremely uncomfortable, occasionally deeply disturbing philosophy class. Hobbes would have loved it, probably. Thank you for being here. It genuinely means the world. See you in the next one.